Senator Feinstein.
Say aye.
Pardon me?
Aye.
Yeah.
Just say
I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense. And it funds priorities submitted.
yeah. Just say aye.
Okay, just
Great, so
aye.
90-year-old Senator Dianne Feinstein appearing confused while voting on a military budget plan yesterday. The California Democrat spent weeks away from Washington earlier this year as she was out for shingles treatment. A Feinstein spokesperson telling CBS News the senator was, quote, trying to complete all of the appropriations bills before recess. The committee markup this morning was a little chaotic, constantly switching back and forth between statements, votes, and debate in the order of bills. The senator was preoccupied, didn't realize debate had just ended, and a vote was called. She started to give a statement, was informed it was a vote, and then cast her vote.
This comes a day after Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell froze in the middle of a sentence while speaking to the press. You see it there. Dr. Frank Contachessa is with Custom Medical Care, and he is with us. Doctor, clearly we have a number of leaders who are either pushing 80 or beyond that. And I want to look at this before we get to the political angle. I want to look at this really from a medical perspective. When you see what's happening, either to like a Dianne Feinstein, a Joe Biden, or what we saw with Mitch McConnell, where he kind of froze there, I'm sure that there are people out there who are saying, you know what? That's happened to me before, I know somebody who that's happened to before. What do you think is kind of going on here with some of these folks? I know you're not their physician and it's hard to diagnose, but what stands out to you?
Well, good morning, Tom and Emma. Well, starting with Leader McConnell, the freezing that we saw in that moment looked to me like something that we call a TIA, which is a transient ischemic attack, which is something like a mini stroke. Now, I don't know that for sure. It could also be a form of seizure, but clearly something happened. And as we see these people age, as we see all these politicians get to an advanced age and are still dealing with a job that's got a lot of responsibility, we see that with other fields too. You know, airline pilots have mandatory retirement ages. Many physicians groups and hospitals have mandatory retirement ages. Now, I can tell you, I do a lot of geriatric medicine, and I've got patients well into their 70s, 80s, and maybe even 90s that run companies. They're attorneys. They're still working. They're still active with a high level of functioning. I would be in favor of some sort of a recertification or an examination, a neurological examination, where they could submit to a neurological evaluation and say, do I still have the wherewithal to have this high responsibility job?
Yeah, that's a great point, because there has been, of course, recent conversation about how old might become a risk not only to the American public who's voted for these folks, but also to themselves. As you know, we know serving in politics can be sort of draining on folks. Mark Halperin's with us now, political analyst. Mark, has there been any interest in this push for term limits when it comes to members of Congress?
Well, we did see, Emma, as you know, a term limit support wave several decades ago. Some states passed them for the state legislature. They exist for the president, of course, but they don't exist for Congress. And I think the sort of energy and momentum of that movement would need a serious shot in the arm if it was going to be the topic of conversation. And of course, unless you pass a constitutional amendment, the very people who would be term limited are the ones who would have to vote to cut off their own careers.
Presidential candidate Ambassador Nikki Haley suggested earlier this year that politicians that are 75 and older should have some sort of a competency test. I think she was pretty well slammed for that, but there is, that seems to be gaining some momentum. Doctor, you seem to agree that we could find ourselves in at least in an informal way trying to allay the fears of a lot of folks in the voting public, if you are of that age, that you do have that level of physical and mental acumen.
Absolutely, Tom. And this is not unprecedented. Many states have rules in place for drivers that if you're going to renew your driver's license above a certain age, they have additional requirements. You might have to pass a new eye test. You might have to submit to a road test again at the discretion of the DMV. So this is not unprecedented, where we ask people who are going to be in a position to have influence over other people's lives and make important decisions to ask them to do some sort of a competency test. I don't think most people would have a problem with this at all. As a physician, I certainly would.
It also seems like sort of an obvious news story, right? You see these politicians. We saw Mitch McConnell freeze up, and no doubt we got some news coverage of it. Being told to play the sound again, here's Mitch McConnell again earlier this week.
Could you address what happened at the start of the press conference, and was it related to your injury from earlier this year where you suffered a concussion? Is that
I'm fine.
You're fine? You're fully able to do your job?
Him about this. And Mark, this got a lot of coverage, on conservative media, liberal media. But compare that to maybe other politicians who are a bit older. Did you see any sort of slant in coverage when it comes to Dianne Feinstein or even our own President Joe Biden when he's had sort of missteps along the way?
Well, look, part of it's what happens on camera, and we've seen 2 high-profile examples of that this week. Those are going to get attention. That's the nature of media business and human nature. But it's the question of behind-the-scenes support. A lot of Democrats have been not supportive of Senator Feinstein, think that she should give up the seat. Some have said so publicly, but a lot quietly. There's not a lot of voices saying Mitch McConnell should go in terms of his health. There are a lot of people on the right who don't like him in the job, but his Senate colleagues, Republican Senate colleagues, have been pretty uniform in saying as long as he wants to be there, he'll be there, and rooting for him to come back and believing that he can. I think those are the big differences between the Feinstein case and the McConnell case right now.
Yeah, but I think the point is that if you have an episode like we saw with the senator, or if you're getting confused like Senator Feinstein or sometimes President Biden, see your physician. I think that's a good rule of thumb, right? Go see somebody and make sure that you're okay. Dr. Frank Contachessa and Mark Halperin, good to see you both. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you.